man. You got my motherfucking money, man. Hell no. Fuck you, nigga. I kill you right here on this corner, man. Man, get my motherfucking money, man. Scared that nigga, man. He will pump 2 holes in you, man. Pump him then, nigga. Me and my crew. Fuck your crew up, nigga. You ain't ready for that bullshit, man. But let's handle it then. But we can handle it then. I ain't fucked up. What you got? Just guess, bitch.
Where it all goes down. Hellbound main zombies like to walk around the block now. The corner stay blinged out with gold chains and pinky rings. Every dope boy trying to get it, man. Chasing that money, man. Gang banging in the hood. Good luck, man. I bet a sack of kush you can get cut, shot. Nigga, what you want to do is all hood, man. Women on the corner selling their body for cocaine. Daughters and sons selling by your marijuana. Ain't nobody want to sleep. Everybody want.
What's up? It's your host, Queen Supreme, and this is the Projects Podcast. And today we are talking about recovering and healing from a trauma situation. Also, please join me next week as Chris gets worried about leaving his grandmother forever. You already know what to do. Hit your girl up at 904-469-7514 or hit me up at Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter on The Real Super Savage or Queen Supreme Podcast and Music to join my mailing list. And we'll be right back.
In the projects that ain't no man, bullshit plan. It's a cutthroat game. In the projects, you better mind your business, man. You better beware, try to maintain. If you're not from there, don't go there. I advise you to stay far away. I said in the projects, niggas is cutthroat. Niggas sell your soul for a dime of dope. In the projects.
And we are back on the Project Podcast. I'm your host, Queen Supreme. And let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, last episode, Lamar had got shot by the Vice Lords and he is recovering. But what is really recovering when you're healing from a traumatic experience? Lamar has been healing from a gunshot wound to the shoulder, and also his family is recovering from this trauma event. When you go through something traumatic, not only are you yourself recovering, but so is your family. And so we're going to be talking about that today, healing from an emotional trauma that has taken place. Because you want to renew your sense of safe abilities, be able to know that you can walk down the street and be safe. Many times people need trauma therapy. So, we're going to be talking about that, but let's get more into the series. Now, Lamar's been going to school, but he hasn't been going to practice, because, he's trying to heal. He's going through physical therapy to where he could, use his shoulder fully to his capabilities. But will this affect his scholarship? He's worried about that. Will it affect how he goes on with his life? Will he remember this forever? Of course. But when you're recovering from trauma, you have to realize that there's going to be some things that you're going to have to do, like forgive and move on. So as Lamar is missing a lot of practice, his excitement about the trip, the senior trip, is not so exciting anymore. Now, of course, his friends are trying to keep up his spirits by coming around every day, helping him to think less of what happened and recover, think more of the future. Lamar is not only worried about his scholarship, but even worried about, does he want to go on the senior trip? Now, the senior trip is the highlight of this series. The senior trip, they're going to go on a escapade, and that means an expedition. That means basically a tour of 6 different cities, the most beautiful cities in the world, and they're going to visit historical places and see what makes that city so beautiful. So this is a very interesting senior trip that they're going to be taking, and along the way there are going to be some challenges. And Lamar doesn't think that he's up for any more challenges, and he's not in a good place. When you're recovering from trauma, you know, you want to, talk to someone. So with that being said, www.betterhealth.gov had some better health channels. It's normal to have strong reaction to the following distress or frightening events as far as being shot. And when people experience this range, it affects them physically, mentally, and emotionally, and behaviorally. So yes, Lamar is not himself, but there are many ways you can cope with recovering with trauma. Like I said, you can seek help. If you don't begin to turn to normal after 3 to 4 weeks. And so, seeking help, you could always call the Victim of Crime Hotline, 1-800-819-817, or the Road Trauma Support Services, Victoria, at 1-300-367-7979, or the Vic Emergency Hotline at 1-800-226-2266. Those are seeking help for trauma avenues. Lamar's traumatic experience is any event in a life that causes a threat or the safety of a potential place or the way you live your lives. And basically, he has to pass that corner every single day, going to school, getting off the bus, getting back on the bus. So he's reliving this trauma every minute. What do you do when your family is trying their best to get you over this hump, but it's just not working? What do you do if you're not the victim, but you know the victim and they're not getting any better? Prayer works. Writing down your feelings hurt. Reactions to trauma is the way a person reacts to it depending on the type of severity. In this case, it was very severe because now he feels helpless. Even though he did stand up to the vice lords and they agreed to leave him alone, he still went through a traumatic experience. It took a lot of courage. So, common reactions are feeling the state of high alert. He's always watching his back. Actually, Lamar wants to get a gun now. He hasn't told anyone, but he's thinking about getting a gun. He's feeling emotionally numb. He's still in a state of shock that, this has happened to him. He's also kind of angry because nothing happened to Jermaine. Now, in some instances, you're not really wanting your friend or family member to get hurt. But when it comes to a traumatic experience and you are the only one that got kind of like physically hurt in a sense, why didn't this person get the same thing that I got and they were there type of feeling? So an emotional and upset feeling becomes to take over. You become very protective of your family and friends. He doesn't want anybody out of his sight. When someone is departing Lamar is very indecisive on whether he really wants to depart them at that time. He's becoming very, he's not wanting to believe a particular place because of fear. So like when it's time to get off the bus to go to go home from school, he doesn't want to get off there anymore. He wants to go to another stop up ahead because it just too much of reminds him. Sometimes even his emotions and reactions are not making sense. So his family is really concerned. They're so concerned that they invite the pastor over from a local church called First Grace Baptist Church, which is about 3 blocks from the projects, and they invite Pastor Troy Mitchell to come and talk to to Lamar because he's confused or disoriented. And his concentration and memory is not where it is. He's repeatedly playing these events over in his mind, and he's beginning to. You can see fear and anxiety and panic in him, and his family doesn't want to get him on any antidepressants or any medications, anything that would hinder him from getting any worse or becoming addicted to any kind of painkillers or any kind of mental medicine. So they rely on what they know best, which is the good Lord. And many times when a family is very active in church, they will have a pastor or someone of the church, a deacon, a mentor, to come and speak with the family if they're in so much of a distress. And this is what they did with Lamar. And when we return, we'll see how that visit went with Pastor Troy. All this and more on the Project Podcast. And I'm your host, Queen Supreme. Please stay with me.
Different mothers, different brothers, different fathers, not even the father at all. I mean the projects, nigga, where the hoes get barred. I said the police scared to go there too. That's why the crime rate up. I thought y'all knew. Bodies getting found every day. So much crack cocaine, niggas can stay far away. I said come to the projects so you can find out what it's all about. I ain't lying, I'm from the south. Cabrini the Green, show the garden, keep it real trio. The projects is where it goes down, and that's for real. The projects, cutthroat to the business, man. The projects, you better beware and maintain. I advise you not to go there if you're not from there, man. Your heart beating, because you're the projects.
We are back on the projects. I'm your host, Queen Supreme, and we're talking about emotional recovery from a traumatic event as what Lamar has been through. The pastor comes over the weekend. So Friday, Lamar comes home and he's still not himself. He goes straight to his room, put his Walkman on, and he's listening to Public Enemy, and he's just thinking and getting madder and more in a depressed mode. Pastor Troy comes in and first speaks with the family and friends that are concerned for Lamar. And, Jermaine is starting to feel like more and more it's his fault. Even though it's not his fault, there was nothing he did to prevent it. He was there at the event when it happened, and he's going through some trauma himself. He's not as worse off as Lamar because, he has to be there for Lamar. But in the back of his mind, this is playing mentally on his emotions. When you come to trauma in a mental state of reactions, this may include reduced in concentration or memory, repeating playing parts of the event, or disorientated in confusion, intense thoughts of the event. So all of these is what is what Jermaine is going through as he himself is worried about his friend Lamar. When the pastor comes in, he reassures the family that he is going to try to get Lamar back on track, but he wants to speak with him in a private setting. So that means without the family or friends. And with that being said, they let him go ahead and go in the room where Lamar is at. When Lamar sees that the pastor is, he knocks on the door, and when he sees that it's the pastor, he immediately gets up, fixes his clothes, and tries to be as normal as possible. And that's what happens when you have outside services that you're new to using, resources that are there to help you. You want to hide it with the facade that you're okay. But in reality, people can see that. So the Pastor Troy walks in and asks him, how's he doing? He takes the Walkman off. He said he's doing pretty good. And so the pastor begins to speak with him about the traumatic experience. As he's speaking with Lamar, he lets Lamar know that there are things that are out of his control that only God can control and God can bring you through. And as he's talking to Lamar, Lamar is listening, but at the same time, Lamar is now getting angry at his family and friends for the surprise visit. With trauma, that's kind of what to expect. After a crisis, you're exaggerated. You're exhausted, and the exaggeration of the event is starting to take place because everything now you're familiarizing yourself with with what happened with daily routines. So now he feels that his family has betrayed him by not being able to tell him, hey, we're going to have the pastor over. Do you like this, nay or yay? He felt like that he was being bombarded. But he listened to the pastor, and the pastor prayed with him, and the pastor reassured him that this too shall pass. And if he would also now like to come into the front room with the family, where he could speak to the family as a whole. Lamar agreed. They went into the foyer of the apartment, which is like the living room and the dining room. And the family is waiting for Lamar to come out. When he comes out, him and the pastor, he's open to see what's going on. So now the pastor addresses the whole family and friends that are there. And he lets them know that this is a traumatic experience for everyone, not just for Lamar. He prays with the family, and he gives the family some resources that they are needed. Basically, which days the church has help lines available in person at the church. Just basically different avenues they could take in order to come in individually or as a group in order to continue what the pastor has just started. Not only does he pray for each individual person with an anointing prayer, he also anoints and prays for each home that they stay in. So that's each apartment. He walks in, he anoints it, and he prays and anoints it for guidance, strength, and to overcome trauma, and for angels to be in the corner of each home to protect them from demonic thoughts, feelings, or actions. When the pastor leaves, he says that he feels that this family as a whole and friends will overcome this. And, he wishes them the best, gives them his number to call and reach out. And he does, what a pastor is supposed to do. So that was very, very wonderful of him. So when the pastor leaves, the grandmother, the grandmothers and the mothers of the other brothers, they all decide to have a potluck at a park this weekend just to get out of the traumatic environment. And that means basically going somewhere where it can't remind anyone of what happened, because every day that they're in this environment, is weighing on all of them. So Lamar is now physically reacting to trauma. He's fatigued, he's exhausted, his sleep patterns are not the same. He's becoming to get headaches and, sometimes even dizziness. When he is going outside, his increased heart rate, it shows. So, everybody agreed to the potluck. So that Saturday night, the boys get together at Lamar's and they decide to play music, video games, and, just have a normal night. And that's what they do. But Lamar cuts the night off short because, like I said, he's exhausted and he has a major bad headache. And so he tells everybody, well, y'all go on home. I'm gonna go to sleep early. And Chris and him is like, man, it's just 11 o'clock. We normally stay up all night. And so he was like, yeah, but I'm exhausted. This, that, and the third. I'm tired, and I just want to get some sleep. And so they said that's fair, and they let him go to sleep. And the next day, the family they go to the park for a picnic. Lamar's behavior is a little bit off because of the trauma, so he's like losing touch with the normal daily routine of just getting up and taking a bath. Due to his grandmother having to help him, he doesn't feel like it all the time. His ability to stop focusing on what occurred is, his intensity of like his nerves, and he's snappy and moody. So they get ready to finally go to the park to do the potluck. And when they get there, they see Lamar kind of distant, but they don't bother him. Everybody's kind of like, just trying to enjoy the mode. So Lamar says, "I want to go to the store." And they said, "Well, we'll go with you, bro." His friends, "We'll go with you." And he was like, I just need to go by myself, just, get some air. But once he gets to the store, he purchases a beer. Keep in mind, Lamar has never had anything to drink in his life, but he feels that if he drinks this beer, it would get some of the pressure and the worry away from him. He drinks this beer. It's a 40-ounce Coke 45 on his way walking back to the park, and he feels so much better once he chugged the beer because he didn't want them to know that he was drinking the beer, but he chugged the beer. And when he gets back to the park, he feels more like himself. And many times you will see people turn to substance abuse for mental or physical relief, and that's what he did. He had a Coke 45, and he finished it right before he got back to the park. When he got back to the park, everybody asked him, "Was he okay? Did he feel better?" And of course, he feels 100% better. So now he's interacting as his self. With that being said, many times one beer is all it takes. Before you know it, you have a substance abuse problem. With this being said, when you're recovering from trauma, behavior, mental, physical, all of these things are weighing and preying on you. And he just wanted a way out. His family thought that the pastor was a way out through God and prayer, but Lamar thinks that beer would be his way out. Will that one beer cause him to drink another and another and another, or will he be able to bounce back? We won't know until later on in the in the show. But let that be said, they finished the potluck. Lamar was, his self finally, and so the family is looking up to this, saying, "We finally got our Lamar back." But do they have Lamar back, or is this just a facade? As they keep hope alive and they enjoy the potluck, they don't even have a clue that he has turned to alcohol as a way of relieving the pressures of life. I'm Super Queen Supreme, and this is the Project Podcast. Hit me up, join my mailing list on Queen Supreme Podcast and Music.com or The Real Super Savage, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Until next time, stay positive, stay focused, and overcome your environment. Peace. Hey man, come on with the rest of that motherfucking money, man. Ain't that dope, bro?
Survival mode, man, I'm in this beast mode. I'm in this bitch and I'm looking crazy in heat mode. After the